Hi there, it's Mark back with another Lightroom tutorial. Taking 1 week break out from doing Photoshop for photographers, but we'll be back with that next week. And today we're going to be looking at features in Lightroom to help you touch up photographs. So we're going to be looking at this picture where that's the before and that's the after, and we'll be looking at this picture where that's the before and that's the after. If you want to learn how to do touch-ups, how to do eye lightening, how to play with masks and start getting a little bit more confident with selections, inverting selections, using radial filters and such, then stick around. That's exactly what we're going to be covering off in this episode. As usual, the images you need are down below in the notes. There's a link to my website where you can collect these images. They're both from Unsplash and credit is given in the naming of the individual files. So we've all got a common set of pictures to work on. So press pause, go and get the downloads, get them loaded in Lightroom, and then at the end of the titles we'll both get cracking and work through today's lesson. See you shortly. Alright, let's start with our first picture, which is this one, and press D on our keyboard for the develop module. And the first thing I'm going to do is just change the crop on this because we're only interested in the top half. So I'll click on our crop tool or press R, which is the keyboard shortcut for recrop. It's already unlocked so that it does not preserve the crop. If it was locked, which it may be on yours, and you change the crop, it maintains whatever the aspect ratio is. Now I don't particularly want to maintain that, so I'm going to unlock in fact, and bring that up and out, a bit more of a square format. I could of course just clicked on custom and 1:1. I was close enough. Okay, and we'll click fine on that. I'm using a tablet here and I'm going to demonstrate why I prefer using a tablet, but you can do everything I'm doing here with a mouse. You just have to be a little bit more mindful of some of the sensitivity of the controls. What do I mean by that? Well, let's choose a local adjustment. Let's choose a brush. Let's put the exposure down on the brush. And I will now just draw a little bit bigger, lightly on the forehead there. And now I will draw here and I'll press harder. If I try the same with the mouse, a light stroke here and a heavy stroke there, there's no difference in stroke, it's just a click. So here you can clearly see that the sensitivity with which I press my pen allows me to put more or less effect or paint or whatever on. So I'll just Control Z to get rid of those. And we'll go for a radial gradient first. And I'm going to click in the middle of her face and drag out to more or less cover. Tilt that a little bit, bring that down. And this overlay allows you to see what is going to be impacted by the change. So sometimes it's worth just having a quick wiggle on something extreme like exposure, just so you, in your mind's eye, you get to see what is being changed. Now, why was that useful? Well, before, this looks like there's red all the way out, and yes, it's feathered, it looks more dense in the middle and less on the outside, which is fine, but it doesn't really let you see exactly what's being done until you impact it with something extreme, I think. So doing this really calls it out to me where the main part of the effect is going to be applied. It's also a good idea in case you don't have your overlay switched on and you don't know which way your radial filter is working, because radial filters and others have an inverse. So if I now brought the exposure down, I'd say, oh, hang on, it's the wrong way around. I want to impact the inside. Instantly, I'm going to leave that one on because I rather like the dark vignette that's causing. So in which case, I'm going to create a new mask, a new radial gradient, and I'm going to pull this one over her face. we go. And little check there, yes, definitely there. Let's do some housekeeping here. Let's actually rename this one Vignette, and let's rename this one Skin Global, because it's a radial filter across her whole face. And on this one I'm going to take my texture and I'm going to bring the texture down. If you're not sure what a slider does, I've always said give it a wiggle, and I think that's quite nice. There are obviously some larger pimples we might want to deal with, but we'll leave that. What it has done though is taking some of the life out of her eyes. So back here on our Skin Global, I'm going to click on Subtract using a brush. Now when I subtract, I can start painting on this now. I'm not actually touching yet, so I'm not. I rather prefer to put the overlay on, so I use O, and I will now do this. And depending on what colour and how strong your overlay is, this will look surreal or not. Now at the moment it looks like a cartoon from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Sorry, Monty Python's Flying Circus. But that's fine, because this particular effect is a subtle texture change. It's not a large exposure change or something like that, which would make it show up really harsh borders. O for overlay, it is purely taking it out of her eyes. And if we click the eye and hold it down, you see the before and after. Okay, let's go finish on that for now, come back to the general edit, and I want to take some vibrance out of this, or saturation. Which will it be? It will always for me be vibrance, always vibrance on a portrait. Saturation to the left takes all colour out, it fully desaturates. To the right it fully saturates. Now that is horrendous, but it keeps going, it doesn't care. It says, look, you want saturation, I'll give you saturation. Vibrance on the other hand, if you go to the left, it doesn't take out all the colour, but conversely it doesn't continually saturate and saturate and saturate. It has limits. It tries its best to preserve skin tones. So albeit that is, as we look at it now, over the top, it's not as bad as it was when we had the saturation tool up. So I always use vibrance over saturation to work on portraits. In this case I still want to take a little bit of colour out, so I'm coming down just a little bit. Alright, let's address one or two of the little pimples and then see what we can do about enhancing those eyes. So let's go back into the local adjustment brush. Instantly you'll have noticed I'm not doing any of the edits on this. I'm not doing any more in the global edits. I will leave that to you. These are just the refinement tools and techniques to address certain issues on the picture. So where was I? Yes, eyes. We'll do eyes first. So let's go for a new mask. Nearly forgot where I was there. And a brush. And there are presets that come with brushes. So if we click here, you'll find there's a preset called Eyes. This one's called Iris Enhance. Incidentally, the one at the bottom says the eyes have it. That's a preset of my own, and I will link to the video above now where we build that. It's a combination of several changes here to enhance eyes. So we've got this one, which was called Iris Enhance. Control or Command plus, just to bring this in, and we would just paint over the iris. Like so. You can see a little bit of noise in this as well. So I'm going to take a little bit of that noise out. That hasn't done too much. I did wiggle it the right way, didn't I? No, it's not doing too much on this particular adjustment. I'm now going to add another mask. Another brush. And this time I'm going to take the exposure up a little bit and the highlights up a little bit. Make my brush a little bit smaller. And with my pen. I'm just going to paint in a little bit in the eyes, nice and subtly. If I was using my mouse, I would have to bring down the flow and the density so that it didn't go over the top straight away. As is, that looks a little strong to me, but as I said earlier, the advantage of a local adjustment is you can always come back in and change what has been applied there. Let's go back to fit this picture to the page, and if we come to here to there, you can see the changes in the eyes. Alright, let's do one or two little spots and then we'll move on to the next picture. So up here we have a spot removal tool. Now incidentally, yours might have changed the view totally, and that all depends on whether or not you have visualize spots ticked here. Visualize spots is a way to change it to this overlay, where it tries to show you where the spots actually are, and it's less aggressive or more aggressive depending on how much you apply. I don't need to use visualize spots here, I can visualize them already. However, it's a great thing to do if you're looking to get rid of dust spots from your sensor, which aren't always obvious in the sky. If they are, great. Well, great for being able to target them, but if they're not, that can actually help. So here we can see we've got some clear spots we want to get rid of, and we're just letting Lightroom take care of these for us, where it wants to place the patch. If you're not happy with where Lightroom, I'm taking a freckles here, which is not what I would normally do, but I'm just demonstrating the tool, and a little mole. If you're not happy where Lightroom chooses, it doesn't quite look right, you can actually take the area and move it yourself to find a better area to blend. I guess an example here would be, let's say I click there, it's decided to patch it from there. If I drag that down, you can clearly see that that is so wrong. I'm watching the top of my arrow to see what it will look like when it's in place, so I can move around and I can sample where I want it to come from. Now that wasn't covering anything, I'm just going to press backspace to delete that particular one. I'll do a little one on the chin. I'm going to leave this down the side of her face because that's more part of her face rather than a pimple. And one or two little bits in here. And then I'm going to call it a day, because this is about showing you the tools and techniques. And incidentally, my brush was too small for that one there, but we can always go back in and change that. So that's one way I would approach doing some touch-ups in Lightroom. Photoshop is far better, it gives you far more control, and I've got a number of techniques to help improve portraits and touch things up and clean them. A lot of photographers' tools, so not way wacky Photoshop stuff, I also do that, but more what a photographer would want to do in terms of cleaning up a picture, getting rid of dust spots, moving the odd thing out of the way, understanding layers, masks and so on. And that series is called Photoshop for Photographers, and I'll put a link to it up above there somewhere. How do I get this to work? Yeah, up the use the right finger, right at the top of the screen now. There'll be a link to my series Photoshop for Photographers. Let's move on to our next picture. G to go back to our gallery, click our picture, D to develop. Oh, and that was the door, excuse me. Sorry about that, not that you saw anything there other than a quick edit. That was cardboard boxes, flat packed and bubble wrap being delivered from Amazon for some picture frames I need to send off to a customer. But that's by the by. So to this picture. Again, I'm not going to bother touching the edits straight away. I am going to zoom in a little bit though. Control or Command plus. Because I want to address an issue with the eyes. Because here we've got some redness in the eyes, and just doing white won't work. Or will it? Well, let's have a go. Local adjustment brush, and I'm going to preload it with about half a stop of exposure, a little bit of highlight. Remember, on brushes, doesn't matter you can always come back and tone them back. There's a difference between where you apply and what you apply. So let's just bring that in there, and as you can see, it is doing an okay job, but there's still a little bit of redness in there. Can we get rid of it with a bit more highlight? And incidentally, in this case, I've just realized I'm using my mouse. You see, I'm so easy distracted. That's probably gone to sleep again now, so let's just press the button to wake it up. Okay, I have gone over. It was evident when I moved this that I had gone over. Now, sometimes I deliberately exaggerate something after, because I find the effect is easier than the overlay to work out what I've done. I'm just going to quickly subtract, but I'm not going to subtract using subtract. I'm going to subtract, if you look in the middle of my cursor there, it's got a plus in the middle of it. If I press my option key, it becomes a minus. I'm just going to use minus and brush. The difference being it doesn't affect the mask. It doesn't add another mask. Right, so let's bring this down to something more tolerable. There's still a touch of red in the eye. What can we do about that? Well, the obvious thing would be to bring down some saturation, and as soon as I start bringing that down, you can see the redness comes out the eye, so it's less noticeable. And don't forget, we are zoomed in here, so I'm going to bring the saturation down a little bit further, and to combat that, I'm going to take the brightness up just a touch. Now, the other thing you can do here to draw attention away from the fact these are a bit white, it won't be so bad when we zoom out, is to treat the iris. So I'm going to create a new mask for this, a new brush, and I'm going to put a bit of contrast and a bit of texture and a little bit of highlight in. What values am I choosing? Well, any for now. I can change them afterwards, and I'm just going to bring that around the iris. And possibly bring the blacks down as well, just a little bit of darkness into the rim, a little bit extra darkness in the rim there. Okay, we could label these, so we could do this one, rename, and this was iris, and this one, oops, and this one, rename, was whites. Okay, let's switch this off, go back to fit it on the screen, and look at before and after. I'm just going to do it from here, from when we first imported, to rename, and that's not too unnatural, it's a little bit bright, so let's go back in and fix that. Deliberately going in and out here rather than one go, just to show you how easy this is. We want to choose the whites, there's our brush, and we want to bring the exposure down just a little bit more, highlights a little bit too, I think, and I'm going to take a little bit of texture out as well from that bit, and let's just click back here. There are other ways to go in before and afterwards in Lightroom, but that's on screen. I'll just show you that way too. Okay, now let's do a little bit of an edit on this. So I think the overall exposure, come up a little bit, highlights down, shadows. I'm going to bring the shadows down too. I like a dark contrasting portrait. Whites, I'm looking above her head, whites of her eyes and a strap of her shoulder. And be mindful not to get too many whites tucked up into the white corner there, and blacks. Can bring down a little bit to darken her hair. And again, overall vibrance, do I want to pick it up? Don't take it down. I want to pick it up, but I don't want to pick it up behind. So let's go back and do adjustment brush, create new mask, Select sky or select subject. Well, sky is just this bit, subject all of this bit, so let's go select subject. Let's invert the selection, and now let's bring the exposure down a little bit behind. Bring the shadows down as well. Highlights down, so I'm going to darken that. And I think in contrast, I want to do the face a little tad brighter. I'm just playing with masks to show you all the things we can do. So I'm going to click on here and I'm going to duplicate that mask. Then I'm going to invert it. So now we're talking about the face. So if I put the overlay on, you'll see it's the face. So we can swap back and forward. And on that one, I am going to bring exposure up a little bit more. Put shadows to where they were, i.e. 0 or near enough. Pick the highlights up a little bit. And that's it. So we addressed the eyes, but in doing so we had to then go and bring the eyes back into context with the face. We could now address the other brushes to do some texture work and that, but that was on the first picture. So why don't you use the techniques from the first picture to apply to the second picture as your homework. But remember, if you then start applying the texture on top, this is another change you're making. I'll hasten to use the word layers, but there is a bit of an order of precedence here. You're applying it on top, and so you'll be undoing some of the other work that you've already done. So you may need to go back in and refine your selections using subtract or using the option key or whatever. I'll leave that to you. And that's it. Quite quick today. We've been about 30 minutes nonetheless, but just taking you through Lightroom to do some touch-ups and get more playing around in using masks and refining masks, selecting subject, inverting things, using the radial filter, deliberately overpowering the effects to get really a sharp idea in your mind of where things are being impacted, and also a really sharp idea about where then to remove things from before toning things back down again. That's one of the advantages of masks in Lightroom. If you enjoyed these, please click on subscribe. If you haven't enjoyed these, please click on subscribe. And if your name has got a vowel in it, click that like button, and please leave me a comment. All of these things take seconds for you to do, but really help my channel. At the time of recording this, I'm only a few subscribers short of 400. I know that's not a big number, but for me it's another rollover of 100, so help me get there, please. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one. The next one's likely to be back into Photoshop for photographers. I think it's going to be number 8. Let me have a look at my notes. Yeah, it's going to be number 8, and we're going to look at the filter gallery, and we're going to be looking at blurring. Episode 9 after that is going to be blend if and starting to do composites, and episode 10, the final in the series, will be the questions and answers and wrap up and look at some things like actions as well. And that's it from me, my tablet. I say bye bye now.